Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Vikings Happy Hour. We got 3 topics for you tonight, and we're going to get it all covered. And hopefully, Luke Braun shows up here any minute to help us out. So grab your Lake Monster beer and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, where we mix our favorite beverage and talk of your Minnesota Vikings. SKOL!
What?
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. Fresh off a victory over the Chicago Bears at home. We're 4-1, NFC North leaders as we head into a Week 5 matchup versus the Miami Dolphins. This show, like every other show, is sponsored by Lake Monster Brewing in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I have it up here right now. If you're in the Twin Cities, make sure to check out their Monster Bash, Saturday, October 29th. Doors open at noon, and they have live music, beer, all day long. So it should be a fun event to go to. I can't go. I'm out of town that day, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of clips to sit and watch and listen to. So tonight, joined by Miles, Ryan, Dave, and hopefully Luke Braun here pretty soon. But I just want to dive kind of right into it, and we can, you guys can jump in whenever. But the topic I want to start on today, and I've gone back and forth if I owe Dalvin Cook an apology or not, because I've said in the course of this season that he's cooked. He doesn't look like himself. And then Sunday in the Chicago Bear game, we saw like glimpses of who he was in the past, but yet he still wasn't like it. And I get the game plan kind of went away, and I don't think it should have. I think it should have probably stuck more with Cook, given how well they were performing in the first half. But I don't know. I just can't quite put my finger on where I think Dalvin Cook is right now, if he's actually cooked or if he's just getting used to this new offense. I mean, it's been 5 games.
Yeah, I used this analogy this weekend. I was on a golf trip with some of my buddies. Hey, welcome, Jason. Glad you're able to catch us live here tonight. So I was out there with some golf buddies, and I said that. I said, dude, I think Cook is cooked. And the way I tried to describe it is, we're used to seeing Dalvin Cook, and if we want to use cooking terminology here, we're used to seeing him be like a nice medium rare steak, right?
Just lean into the analogies.
Yeah, just like a medium rare steak, just perfect, right? Yep. Where I'm not sitting here saying he's well done. I'm not sitting here even saying that he's medium well. He's probably just at a medium right now where he's no longer, in my opinion, elite. I don't think that he needs to be an every down back like he has been over the last few years. But in these moments, like you watched and you said in the Bears game this week, he did split. I mean, obviously he had the majority of the carries, but Alexander Madison came in and he played relatively well as well. And I think that's keeping Dalvin fresher. I think that's allowing him to keep the burst the limited amount of burst he has, because I don't think he has the burst that he can do this all game long anymore.
So are you saying that
that's kind of where
like
I'm at.
This is strategic by Kevin O'Connell, like almost preserving Dalvin Cook for later in the season?
Absolutely.
That's what it sounds like to me. Miles, you got any food analogies you can throw at Dalvin Cook here?
No food analogies, but there's a couple like comparisons I look at like a Dalvin Cook. So Dalvin Cook, very similar to like an Adrian Peterson in the sense that he's the kind of running back who excels with the more he gets the ball, the better he tends to be, right? Like most players, the more they get the ball, the more opportunities, the more cracks they have at it. So Dalvin Cook's that type of player. He's the kind of guy. He's not really that good of a receiver, but he's the kind of guy you get him if you build an offense around him. he's going to thrive. That's what Mike Zimmer did. That's what Gary Kubiak, Kevin Stefanski, those offenses were built around Dalvin Cook. Well, we've inverted that now, and so it's become the offense is really focused on the passing game and Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson's become the Adrian Peterson. He's become the Dalvin Cook. He is the guy that sets the tone for the entire offense, and the other guys now are just the complementary pieces. And so, I think Dalvin Cook. I don't know. Again, I can't speak for Dalvin, but he seems like the kind of guy who's not used to it. Kind of like 2018, he kind of has to find himself get himself into a rhythm, kind of understand the tone of the offense. But I think the difference between Kevin O'Connell offense and the John DeFilippo, for better or not, whatever you want to say about John DeFilippo, there were some decent plays back in 2018. I think Kevin O'Connell actually has a plan for his run game, which I don't think John DeFilippo did in 2018. I don't think he had any sort of like legit plan for how to like really develop a run game. And so I think you're seeing O'Connell build that out. And I think you're seeing Madison get those same opportunities as well. And I think Madison just happens to be a guy who has a little bit better hands and catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit better than Cook. And so I think he's just going to get a little bit more opportunity there. But I don't think he's cooked by any means, like kind of what Ryan said. I think he's more in that medium range, right? Like he's the guy that sells explosion. You can see it. He can still get to the edge faster than most guys. But he's the kind of guy that you're not going to give him the ball 25, 30 times a game anymore. Maybe 15-ish, 12 to 15 times a game he's touching the ball, and I think that's okay. I mean, I think he's kind of just at that point.
Luke, welcome to the show. We are talking about whether or not we believe Dalvin Cook is cooked and how Sunday's game has, at least me specifically, a little bit more conflicted on how I feel about him, because I saw those glimpses of eliteness as he was somewhat toying with the DB as he beat him to the edge for one of those touchdowns, and he had some of that burst. So we've used food analogies, we've everything you can name, but what do you feel about Dalvin Cook? Do you think he's cooked?
No. He's got a shoulder thing. He's on a pitch count. They're taking him off on third downs. That explains like everything statistically. He's not running anything on any of the third and shorts or anything he would usually be on those, but they're taking him off for every third down. I mean, look at him run, man. He looks great. He's got the wiggle. Remember the one at the end of the Saints game, which is post injury? Like he was doing great. This is going to be a more pass heavy offense than what we saw with like Zimmer led teams, and that's okay. But they got him running shallow crosses on mesh. He's doing awesome. It's just a different role.
And I think that might be a part of it too, right? It's just a different way that we're seeing Dalvin Cook maybe utilized. But yeah, to your point, on Sunday, for sure, I definitely saw those glimpses that we were used to.
As fans, like we've mentioned, we spent 15 years watching the running back be the focal point of an offense outside of a couple seasons. Yep. 2009 with Brett Favre and 2018 essentially were like the 2016 too, because of the offensive line issues. Like those are like the 3 seasons in the last like 15 years that the running back has not been the focal point of the offense in Minnesota. So I think fans don't know how to act or react to it because we're just so used to seeing that as the focal point. So we assume that means that player isn't as good as they used to be. And yes, I don't think Dalvin Cook is as good as he was a couple of years ago. That's fine though. That's kind of the expectation anyways with running backs. But I think if he can just be efficient, I think, and still see some of those explosive plays, which, like Luke mentioned, we're seeing a few of those still too. So, but I do wonder how he handles a full season without being a guy that gets 20 plus carries a game, because that's just not going to happen now.
Well, and it's interesting the fact that, maybe this is all part of the game plan, like we kind of mentioned earlier, right? We're winning games with Alexander Mattison taking a good chunk of work off of Dalvin Cook's plate and allowing him to heal, so to speak. Obviously, he's still playing, but allow him to not take so many hits on that shoulder. Maybe by the end of the season, he's going to still be relatively fresh compared to what he had been in the past and not breaking down like he typically would, and that'll help us during the playoff push.
Well, so that kind of leads me to my other question then. Oh, go ahead, Luke.
Sorry. I feel like every time something's different than what we're used to, we find a way to make it. Is this cause for concern? Is this the new emergency?
Exactly.
No,
we're a triggered fan base.
We got to calm down. It's time. It's a new staff. Embrace change. All right, things aren't going to be the way they used to be, and that was the point.
Yep.
Well, I mean, things are not how they used to be. As we're now 4-1. I think Kevin O'Connell is off to one of the best starts for a new Vikings head coach in Vikings history. So is this team legit then? Like, do we believe that this team is a contender? Or I know last week, especially, we saw a lot of they're a fraudulent 3-1. Now they're 4-1.
Define contender. Like, so people say the
Pretty
word
fraudulent
contender.
4-1.
Right. Well, yeah, I agree. But like people use the word fraudulent or not fraudulent, contender a lot. But what do you mean by the word contender, Matt? Contender for what?
Yeah, so that's a good question. You're putting me on the spot here. I would probably just say like in contention for like could they even win a playoff game, or are they just one of those teams that's going to have like a good regular season record and then be bounced in the first round? Like, would you trust this team against playoff caliber teams?
Can we see one?
But yeah, that's what I mean.
That's
like
true.
that's exactly it. Like we've seen technically two, but one of them looks fraudulent too in the Green Bay Packers, and we saw them against the Eagles, who are arguably the best team in the league, and we saw how that went down. That's not to say by January the Vikings are playing that poorly against the Eagles, but it is one thing I do wonder about. The Dolphins this week is a little bit of an easier situation than we expected even a couple weeks ago, but I think they're contenders for the North. I think winning the North should not be out of question by any means. Not just because they beat Green Bay week one, but because of how poorly Green Bay's playing, and I think the Vikings the Vikings schedule. I just think there's like no reason that they shouldn't win the North this year, which I might not have said like 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, they were game up, and they got a tiebreaker on everybody. Get 3-0 in the division should be. Now you're kind of downhill to winning the division. I feel like the game that answers this for us hasn't been played yet. And I know that's like a lame answer, but fast
Which
forward
game do you think
to
that is?
I don't have the schedule in front of me. Probably Buffalo, maybe,
Yeah,
or sometimes it's a game. It's like give me a division, like a 3 or a 4 seed, like somebody that's winning.
Give me like the Cowboys. Give me like the Cowboys. Cardinals are like two teams that like I think, especially since they're both NFC teams, they're teams that like there's talent. There might be a little bit of like back and forth with their offenses. The Cowboys scare me a little bit because that defense is legit, right? Like the Vikings over the last, even this year have struggled against defenses, like mediocre defenses. But how do they fare against like really good defenses, and how does O'Connell adjust to those teams like a Micah Parsons and that Cowboys defense?
I think if you think they are a 500 team, fair enough, and they go 500 for the rest of the year, they are 10-7. That's in the dance. Let's see what happens.
I mean, you just need a puncher's chance, right? I mean, you never know what happens in those playoffs, and the way this offense. Here's the thing that I guess I'll say. I haven't answered the question, right? Contenders or pretenders. It's very disheartening to see us not we're winning. We're putting away these mediocre teams, but we're not putting away these mediocre teams, right? We had a big lead against the Bears. We allowed them to come and take the lead. We needed a game-winning drive for Kirk to be able to do that, which again, on the flip side, very encouraging to see Kirk go and win this game, right? Same with the Lions. We get down on the Lions, we come back and we beat the Lions. Again, the unfortunate part is these aren't great teams. These are teams that are 2-3 or 1-4. And so that's the disheartening part is we almost look like we're the best of the lousiest, but we're definitely not, and we're likely going to be the lousiest of the best, right? So it's a little disheartening to see that. So I would hedge more on the pretenders at this point in time until this defense can show that if our offense can get us a lead, they can put up the wall so we don't have to worry about a come from behind victory against us.
At least the NFC sucks. Like that helps.
Yeah, that's the thing.
We'll make the playoffs. I wholeheartedly think we make the playoffs.
I feel like there's one contender in the NFC, and we already played them.
And they kicked their butt.
And how'd that go?
Yeah,
I do
well,
wonder.
we'll see him in the
I do
NFC
wonder about
Championship, I guess, because this is the only other
I
good
do.
team.
Yeah. Well, the NFC East out of nowhere has 3 teams that are, have 4+ wins. So or was 4 wins. So it's
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of crazy.
Yeah,
So
it
I
should be
think-
interesting
Yeah,
how it
Giants
all
have more to
plays
prove to me
out.
than the Vikings do.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna
I
say
agree.
there's another fraudulent, if you want to call us a fraudulent team, there's another one in the Giants that
Oh,
are
yeah.
4-1 as well. So it should be interesting how it all plays out. You look at like some of the different teams that are considered the top of the NFC, right? Packers, we beat them. The Bucks, they lost to the Packers, who we beat, right? Like, but they also lost without like any playmakers on offense. So I don't know how legit that win was for the Packers, but to your point, I don't know if there's anyone that I would say we couldn't compete with except for maybe the Eagles. And that's just because I saw us play against each other. It just wasn't our best game. Hopefully they lose a couple and maybe we can get home field advantage, because I do think that makes a difference for us as well.
Well, and real quick too, Ryan, Mary, perfect question. Are we worried about the defense? Like, we can segue, Matt, into that. That was going to be, one of our last topics of the night is this Vikings defense. I think the one thing that like kind of similar to like the offense that we just talked about, like the run game and the pass game, and like how fans are seeing different. The one thing that you're not seeing much different is the defense right now. The defense isn't much different now than it was, the last couple of years in 2020, 21. And I don't mean that like literally. I mean that in like, there are some statistics that are different, but like overall, the defense isn't good. But I think the one thing that I wanted to mention is that like 75% of that defensive roster is a holdover from the Zim regime. And I think the one thing that people keep forgetting is that the defense wasn't good the last 2 years under Zim, and they kept majority of those guys. And then you switch the scheme. So you're then now asking a different head coach that isn't Mike Zimmer, who Mike Zimmer is still arguably one of the best defensive minds in football. You're asking a new defense coordinator to come in and be better than Mike Zimmer. And again, same player, mostly the same players, especially at the key positions. And I just don't think to expect like significantly better it was like realistic for even an Ed Donatel. And I think he's a decent coach, but I think he's catching a little bit too much heat because I just don't think some of the personnel he has is fully developed into his system yet. I think, again, you have a lot of guys that played 5+ years in a 4-3 scheme under Mike Zimmer, and now they're having to switch to a 3-4. Like Danielle Hunter might not be Danielle Hunter at all this year compared to what we know, just because he has more reads, he has more like responsibility than what he had as a 4-3 defensive end compared to an outside linebacker now. So I just think fans need to be a little more patient about the defense, but we need the offense. The offense needs to be the one that like picks it up significantly and make sure that the defense isn't in some of these situations that we've seen over the last couple of weeks where they're letting teams back into the game because the defense isn't very good. So the offense needs the one that kind of needs to keep the foot on the pedal a little bit more and keep teams like the Bears from coming back in games.
Luke, you look at the all-22, I think more than probably any of us. What are your thoughts on this Vikings defense? Like, should we be concerned about them long-term, or do you think it's another one of those things where, I know Ed Donatel was just like, it takes time. And I think we even saw that back when Zimmer took over. It took a little bit of time for that defense to gel. But curious your thoughts on that.
I think somebody in the comments just nailed it. SKOL TYA catch something said Harrison Smith said it. We're winning while we're learning. They are processing a lot. They are thinking a lot, and it's making everything a little slower. And they're making a lot of communication-based mistakes. What I've noticed, the mistake that I've noticed the most, and you're guessing a little on this, so I don't know. I could be wrong, right? But my guess is it's a lot of it is in coverage adjustments. So you'll have your coverage rules, and then depending on what route combination you see, there can be adjustments to keep guys from being in bad positions that will kind of say, okay, I'll trade jobs with you because my guy's going underneath or whatever. And they've been screwing that up, and that's been coverage busts. Coverage busts, the worst kind is when everybody takes the shallow and nobody takes the deep. But sometimes it's everybody takes the deep, nobody takes the shallow, and they just got a free 7-yard completion, and it's a more subtle coverage bust, but it still is one. That's been happening a lot. And it kind of doesn't matter who's who looked better in college, who's got the best draft pedigree, who's on the biggest contract. If you miscommunicate, you miscommunicate. You could have all pros all down the line. If they're not communicating, your defense is going to suck. So that's what's happening right now. In my opinion, it's been happening less and less. Rough day against the Bears. So that kind of bucked that trend. But on the whole, I think it's getting just a little better all the time. It's going to be a slow burn to get better, but once it does, you'll be able to bust out some more creative and exotic stuff, and you'll be able to it'll feel a little bit less like vanilla zone, soft, everything. But that's going to take a while, and I don't think they get here. I don't think they get there by the end of the year. So I think we just live like this year. You're just going to have to win games, 35-30, especially as games don't get like this Bears game. Everybody had 8 possessions. It got that long drive at the end of the fourth quarter, just like compressed the game a ton. But you're going to start seeing score lines like that. And that's just going to be how we live this year. And next year, I think you'll be able to see something a little better. But you also have a lot of guys that were drafted into a 4-3 and were meant to do 4-3 things that are doing stuff out of position. You might not have, we might be saying goodbye to some beloved names this offseason just because it's a fit thing. And they're not the player they were under Zimmer because they were meant to be a Zimmer player. And now they're sort of square pegs, round holes, doing their best. But they're going to be building something new here. That's what you get when you change staffs. You got to build it all up.
Going back to that all 22 kind of concept there, Luke, we were talking about Dalvin Cook being cooked, right? We have some very expensive aging players on the defense that are also looking like quote unquote cooked. Harrison Smith hasn't looked himself. Again, this is all on, I haven't watched any all 22. So this is why I'm asking the question, because I don't watch a lot of all 22, but it looks like, and it might be coverage or communication, but looks like he's not always making the right play that we're accustomed to seeing in the Zimmer defense, right? And we're not seeing the splash plays he makes. Same with Kendrick, same with Hunter, right? So from the all 22 perspective, are fans wrong to be worried about these guys? I know we're talking scheme and whatnot. Are they, based on what you know, are they playing well and we're just not seeing it because of coverage bus, or are they not playing that well?
I'm going to put it in terms I know Matt's going to love. Imagine you were in a community theater production and you were running, let's say Wicked, and you got to learn all the lines, all the blocking and everything. And you do great there. And you do so great, you get a job doing another job and another play, and they're running Rent, different play. Suddenly, you're not great right off the bat because you're learning new steps, you're learning new blocking, you're still learning stuff. That's what's happening with everybody. Eric Hendricks is making mistakes. He's not zoning off properly. He's missing his landmark. There's miscommunications between him and Shannon Sullivan or Jordan Hicks or whatever. Those are mistakes. But when we say, is a player good, should we be worried about them? Well, should we be worried about him making those mistakes forever? Will he just never learn this? Hard for me to buy. Harrison Smith, a lot of it is he's just playing on the roof. He's just there. It's very often that these safeties are playing really deep, taking away deep stuff, and the play just comes down to what happened somewhere else, right? Shannon Sullivan screws up. There's nothing Harrison Smith can do about it. But there's also times when it is his job and he's supposed to, come down and make a play. And because he's still thinking and still learning and still kind of processing things with a new rule set, learning to think in a new language, maybe that's a better way to do it, to say it, then he's going to be a step late to it. And then instead of it being a contested catch, it's a catch and a tackle. And then if you miss the tackle, like that's a whole nother thing. And then they've got all kinds of problems downfield. We saw Justin Fields take a lot of advantage of that, especially on the block in the back, the Fields touchdown. They weren't really, you can tell they haven't talked about how they handle things in the open field yet, because they're still just trying to get the basics down. And so everybody's just trying to run and make the play. And well, if you're halfway decent at juking, you're going to be able to get that guy off all the time. So yeah, that long-term worried, unless these guys stopped learning how to learn football concepts. No. But what do you mean by long-term, right? You mean long-term, will this be fixed in a month? Yeah, absolutely not. But are they players that are bad now and we have to cut them? And should we start looking at should we start looking at Danielle Hunter replacements in the draft? No, that would just be needless panic.
Sure. Well, hey, you know what? We already have a replacement inside here at Asamoah. Apparently, he looked pretty good on Sunday.
The coup is here. He's gonna start taking over Jordan Hicks. He ate into his snaps. Kevin O'Connell even talked about it in Wednesday press conference. So yep, we're gonna get him in more, and that's not a sub package, baby.
Let's go. Let's go.
And a little speed on the field finally.
Luke talking about the core pieces on defense that we're so used to seeing make splash plays. Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith, Danielle Hunter a little different. I'm going to exclude him just because his position is significantly different. But Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith played positions in the Mike Zimmer defense that were so important to how that entire defense fit everything else. And this defense doesn't ask the same things of those two guys now. There's a lot less true responsibility the way Eric Kendricks could shoot gaps in completely different ways that he can now. Harrison Smith played at the line of scrimmage a lot and was around the line of scrimmage blitzing and doing a lot of those things that they're not asking him to do those things because of how the scheme is. And so a lot of the things that we got so accustomed to seeing those guys do, they're not being asked to do that. And so I think when we talk long-term, kind of Luke kind of hinted at this, that's a part of why those two guys specifically might not be long for this team long-term. I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing. That's just kind of where they're at. And so I don't like to look that far ahead.
Especially for their price point, right? They're expensive
exactly.
players. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm not trying to look that far ahead. We're in the middle of the season. The Vikings are 4-1. Don't want to look bleak, but I think that's just part of where fans need to, again, we got to readjust our perspective or our thoughts or what we're thinking on who should be doing what, because we're so used to Zimmer was here for 8 years, 7, 8, whatever that was. We got so used to everything was the same for so long. And so I just think it's a new brand of football. Welcome to 2022. We're kind of doing modern football now. And so there's less of that smash mouth stuff and a little bit more of that innovation. And so, I just think we just got to be a little bit more patient with the defense specifically.
One last call
if you look at the older media, the newspapers and stuff, how many Viking shows are there now? And stuff like this, live shows or podcasts or whatever, everything I do, how many Vikings things are around that were also around to watch Mike Zimmer build his? Most of this crap got started 2017, 2018, 2016, where we were already well entrenched. So we have not seen this kind of thing in this particular context. I certainly have not covered a transition from one coach to another. Last time we did this, I was barely watching. Like Miles said, we gotta be ready to understand that Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith, perfectly good players, but a new staff's going to want to bring in their new guys every time, no matter who they are. And that means saying goodbye to people who we might still like. And that's okay. Yep. Go Anthony Barr, go be a Dallas Cowboy and prosper. And we love you. But it's not about trying to retain every tiny little morsel of talent we have. If they don't fit, they don't fit, and they can go be good somewhere else. That's how the league works. And now we're bringing in our own guys and look ahead, not behind.
I was gonna say one last call here on the defense, and somebody alluded to Booth playing on Sunday. Just want to get your overall thoughts, and then we'll do predictions and call it a show. But what do you think about the secondary? So Cam Dantzler, obviously, right now is riding a high after essentially sealing the victory on Sunday. Patrick Peterson, I think he's played fine, but what do you think as an overall secondary now, especially since Lewis Cine is gone for the whole year? I'm tossing it to you, Luke.
Oh, there we go.
That's why I was watching Cam Dan tape and lost track of time, and that's why I was late. Are we talking how are they playing, or are we talking how should we start looking at corners in the draft? Or are you talking about like roster construction, or I guess, yeah, what's the
Just how are they
more
playing?
specifically, what's the question?
How are they playing?
Not great. I don't love it. That's a lot of miscommunications. I think Shannon Sullivan has been an abject disaster. Getting beat at the
Arif
catch.
Hassan
he
will
got
love that.
crushed by.
Arif
Can we-
hates
Well,
Chandler
yeah, that's
Sullivan.
great.
Hey, Luke, real quick,
Name
can we talk
searcher.
about
Terrible.
Can we talk about the hardest position in football right now might literally be the nickel position?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like that position
Yeah,
is so
maybe.
hard.
I
Like,
mean, corner is
it's like-
impossible.
yeah, corner's impossible, but like nickel seems to be like bad across the league. You might have a couple good nickel cornerbacks in the league, but everybody else is just bad. And that's not like their fault. It's just like that's how hard that position is.
Especially
Yeah,
when there's like elite
especially-
slot receivers all around the league too.
Yeah,
Like, and then
right.
you're bringing the Justin
Yeah.
Jeffersons into the slot. You're bringing all the elite talent that's great on the outside into the slot so they can get off the number one corner. I mean, yeah, you're just it's impossible.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. I would say the hardest position in football is, more specifically, it's nickel, but it's nickel in like cover 7 defenses, like what we just had with
Yeah.
Zimmer,
Yep.
because that guy also has to basically be adjusting coverages on the fly and halfway be a play caller. That's way even harder.
He's a
not as
linebacker.
much
Yeah, he's
here,
a
but still a
linebacker.
lot of
And-
communication.
yeah.
Yeah. Which still a lot of communication. And I it's hard with the coverage busts because I can't know what the call was supposed to be. I can just know, okay, he thought it was that, and the other guy thought it was something else, and I don't know what it was supposed to be, but one of you was wrong, and Sullivan's just in a lot of them. So maybe everybody else is wrong. He's the only guy that's right all the time. I literally can't know, but I kind of think. Yeah, there's that. I love how Cameron Dantzler's been playing. Not huge on how Patrick Peterson's been playing. Been burned one too many times for me. Looks a little old. That's okay. We're paying for that, I think, right now. I think we're getting what we're paying for out of him. And I am mostly pretty happy with the safeties. I think Cam Bynum's had a couple of moments if you really want to nitpick. And the way they're using Harrison Smith right now, I think will be one of those things that comes to more fruition when people stop screwing up all the time, because he is doing the like weak safety roaming kind of thing, which is sort of like one of the biggest points of this Donatel scheme is to have that guy free a lot of the time. He's on the weak side playing quarter safety. Unless a second route goes vertical, he basically has a lot of leeway to just sort of watch the quarterbacks and try to make a play. And I think once Smith retires, Lewis Seen is supposed to be that guy. I think that's the plan. But that's what Smith is right now. It's just that we're not getting to a point where that's coming up because somebody screwed up the coverage or because Justin Fields just scrambled instead and it made it all moot. But that's one of those things that I think will get really cool once guys just screw up a little less.
Yeah,
Well, and
for
I
sure.
wonder if we can see some more improvement, like snap over snap from the pass rush. I think that too could obviously help. I think that's how important. That's like the pass rush is that important in this type of defense, right? Like if we can, because you're asking your cornerbacks to play off and play to keep everything in front of them, type of a defense. And if you have a good pass rush, or at least an elite pass rush, then you're going to make your corners look that much better. And I think that's where, like, I think some people are saying, "Oh, Patrick Peterson's fine." Well, he's actually not. But I think at times he's getting bailed out by, a pass rush by Zadarius Smith, by Daniel Hunter a little bit. And so if we could get a little more consistent, even DJ Wanham, I think the one player like DJ Wanham might actually really fit this defense better than most of the defenders we thought coming from the old regime. Like I think DJ Wanham seems to have a pretty good place as a rotational pass rusher in this defense. I'm not trying to sit here and say he should be a starter or anything like that, but I think he's flashed even a little bit more than even he did in the past. So just excited to see that. But I think we could get a little bit more get home with a the front four, front five, type of thing. I think then you'll see a little bit better coverage situations happen too.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, this pass rush really needs to improve. I mean, watching Justin Fields have all that time with that line that he has in front of him was it's just very frustrating. But yeah, I'm excited. I really want to see I really want to see Andrew Booth come in, and it looks like he's finally healthy. I want to see him get just a couple snaps, see how he does. I don't know if he's going to get there because he's been out for so long, basically. This week, I don't think it's probably in the cards, but hopefully after the bye week, he maybe gets a little bit of run and kind of see where he's at. Because again, we all know me. I love players with a little attitude. I love players with a little dog in them, and he's got that, and that might bring some attitude to this defense. This defense looks dormant, honestly, to me. They look like lifeless, and maybe just a little energy from some of these rookies like Asamoah and Booth might be able to light a little fire onto that defense and give them some confidence.
Maybe. The team is going to likely face, is it Skylar Thompson? Is that his name?
K-State.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yes. Or Teddy Two Gloves. Either one I think I'd be excited for various different reasons. But let's get some predictions here, and then we can call it. But does anyone know the spread offhand? I haven't checked recently.
Yeah, it's Vikings by 3.5 right now. Over unders 45.5.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Luke,
that's Bet Online. I don't know what other books have.
But... are you doing a shameless plug to your sponsor?
No, that's just the one I have bookmarked because that's the one I have to use, because that's the one we use for all the Locked On shows. So that's the one I have like quickly on hand. But yeah, I don't know, you DraftKings or whatever. I'm not on Locked On, right? I can say whatever I want.
A simple text asking for a prediction turned into a full-on guest appearance by you, Luke. So I will let you go first tonight on your prediction for Sunday.
Sure. I just recorded my episode for Crossover Thursday with Locked On Dolphins. In that we put our brains together and figured out something like a 23-20 Vikings win makes the most sense.
Okay. Any dramatic, like you thinking a Greg Joseph field goal, or maybe better yet, a missed field goal by the Dolphins to send it to OT?
Cam Bynum picks off a Hail Mary, Josh Metellus style. But it was always going to be, but it was, 16 seconds. They had 80 yards to go. It was always going to be, one of those where it's like only the Vikings can screw this up, and then we're relieved that they didn't. That's going to be the mood.
Miles, we get a live prediction from you this week. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I do. I think the Vikings should win this game. I mean, you're going up against as of right now, the third quarterback for the Dolphins. Yes, it looked like Tyreek Hill was a full participant in practice today. I mean, how much he actually practiced, whatever, but like they listed him as full. Him and Waddle, I do worry about, because that speed is unreal, and this defense isn't very fast. Patrick Peterson, Cam Dantzler, Cam Bynum, Harrison Smith, those guys aren't known for their speed. Not anymore. Patrick Peterson, not anymore. But I'm worried about that. But again, if this was Tua, maybe even Teddy, have a different conversation about how I feel about this game. But I think Skylar Thompson, just don't let anybody beat you deep. That's essentially kind of what I'm asking for at this.
That's what we do.
And that's what I know, right? But they've still been beat. That's just don't get don't let Tyreek go 75, right? Don't let Jalen Waddle go 75. Those are the types of plays you can't have. And so, I mean, I do expect the Vikings to win this game. I think the Vikings have proven that they're a good football team. I do wonder. I think the Dolphins aren't the Dolphins are obviously a good team. They're just hurt, and so it's a good test. I think it's a good test either way. I think the Vikings offense against their defense. I think the Vikings should be able to put up points. So I'll say 27-17 Vikings.
Okay. Ryan?
God, I hate doing that. Oh.
Yeah, he basically kind of took my score.
Picking the Vikings?
It's not picking the Vikings. It's picking the Vikings handily. That's.
Oh, yeah, that's dangerous. 10 points, I would never do that.
I mean, at this point,
27-24 Vikings.
There
Damn
it is.
It.
I would say if we can't put up that kind of point spread against the Bears, I don't know how we're expected to do that against the Dolphins. But I guess they do have Skylar Thompson, but I don't know. Literally, by the way, Skylar Thompson, I watched that guy for 6 years play Oklahoma every year, and it was literally there were games he'd throw the ball 6 times, and they beat us somehow because K-State just has our number.
Oklahoma sucks.
Yeah, they're awful now. At least this year. But what I was gonna say is so seeing him in those preseason games throw like 24, 25 passes and for like 300 yards or whatever it was, I was very shocked. But I'm going to go with the Vikings win. I do think that their offense struggles just because Skyler hasn't played a number one. I mean, I guess he did last week, but he hasn't really played a number one defense in the league from a starting position here. So narrow win, 24-19. They're going to go for a 2-point conversion and miss it, be at 19 points, and we'll seal the victory there.
That's a good prediction. I like that.
24-19. I do think we win. I think we're going to be 5-1. Luckily, I think this probably should have been a loss had Tua stayed healthy, and what if the Dolphins would have continued on their roll there. But I think we catch a little break, which we kind of have all season. But I think that we barely squeak this one out, and I don't think it's going to be a high scoring affair. I'm thinking like 19-17. A lot of field goals again. Nothing to really back that up. It's how I feel. So
gotta go with the gut sometimes, Matt.
I know. I've been overly optimistic in the past, so it's about time.
You called for like 4
optimistic.
blowouts this year. Yeah, you called.
Yeah, and how's that gone for us?
None of them. It's not Viking style.
4-1.
Yeah.
This roster does not blow out teams. Like that's not who this roster is.
They're not consistent enough.
I love how like we're so damaged by all these backup quarterbacks who have beaten us that like nobody has the confidence. So like somebody saying the next Cooper Rush, whatever. It's just like,
yeah,
Lord. We're just a beaten.
They are hell bent on having the same quarterback play a whole game and practice a whole week for them, which they have not had in 2 weeks. Like they're so burnt out by having like guys have to play without any practice reps. That's why like they could start Teddy, and that's why they aren't, because they're like, no, we're gonna have one guy and we have no tape on him. This is a disaster waiting to happen.
Oh man. Well, Luke, I want to thank you for hopping on tonight. Shorter show than usual.
Sorry, I lost track of time.
No, that's fine, man. I'm glad you still showed up. So, anything you're working on that you want to share with the fans, and then we can send it to Dave to take us out of here.
Yeah, of course you can find me all the time on Locked On Vikings. You can find that wherever you find podcasts. You can find the Minnesota Football Party as well on the Locked On Minnesota Sports feed. You can find my Patreon, patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. Got the history doc from the offseason up there. Now I'm doing tape breakdowns. Open to the public. You can open to the public. You can find a Christian Darrisaw breakdown and just watch him inflict violence on people for about 10 minutes. And I'll have a Kirk Cousins one that'll be public by tomorrow, but for now it's patrons only. About some of the stuff he did pre-snap against the Bears. I really think that he made that win happen before the snap a lot. And it's really cool. So I dove into it.
Sweet. Dave, what do we got the rest of the week?
We have 2 old bloggers on Saturday, myself and Darren, both commenting on the Vikings publicly for over 2 decades. Luke talked about, is there anyone out there that went through coaching changes? Yes. I was blogging way back then. Even had a chili meter when we were going through that firing. Ooh. Back on Loof's Locker Room way back in the day. But no, that's what we got. And then, of course, we have the post game on Sunday. Final 2 minutes, we go live. And Luke, I do like your post game podcast as well.
Oh yeah, the postcast with Sam Ekstrom.
Yep.
Also, you can find that on the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel and on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed.
How are the bunnies doing?
Doing great. Probably making a bunch of noise. You can probably hear them.
Mm-hmm. Did they miss you when you were in England?
Probably not.
Okay.
They go to a bunny hotel that spoils the heck out of them, so they're thriving.
Okay, good. Good.
I mean, that's a real thing. A bunny hotel.
Well, not like
it's
a literal
California.
hotel, but it's the person. The person we adopted them from.
It's like a kennel for bunnies.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you have
It's
a
a
dog,
charity.
you can take your dog somewhere like to be kenneled or to like a certain place while you go on vacation or go out of town. It's like the same thing. Do that for any animal, basically.
I just never knew that was like
Yeah.
that was a thing. I didn't know bunnies were so mainstream. That's awesome.
They are not,
I'm
and I
gonna
do
take
not
care
think
of
it's a thing outside of this particular person in Los
Just
Angeles.
one person. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Damn.
But that's all we have. Luke, I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you, Matt, Miles, and Ryan. As usual, you guys are doing great. And what do we say?
Skol Vikings.
Skol Vikings! Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a special shout out goes to our partners, the Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found, and to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. Skol, everybody.